Hi everyone, Laura Wilson from Gold Star Work here. Today I'm going to show you how I painted one of these galaxy girls. Today we're going to do this moon girl one, but here's a few others that I've done, so you can do any colours and any concept of galaxies that you like. I'm just going to show you the general process that I used here. So it's not a step-by-step tutorial as such, but you will see me doing the whole painting and you'll see how I did the glazing and the stars and how I've used different mediums to get a really glowing picture for that galaxy look. So I started off with doing lots of pencil sketches to try and figure out my concept for this moon galaxy girl. And because I'm not very good at figures, I had to do a lot of different practices and practicing her face in particular. So this is the face I decided I liked the best, and then I had to try and redraw that a few times so I could get it onto my canvas. And as you can see, I got a bit impatient here when I was doing my pencil drawing, and I did my pen and then tried to rub it out before it was dry, so it's gone a bit smudgy, but for this particular painting it's not going to matter too much. Now I did the black pen around her face and her hands and things because I don't want to lose those details when I paint over them, because I don't want to have to try and reinstate them later. But a word of warning, if you are doing the pen on here, when you paint over it, the pen will probably show through, so don't put pen marks anywhere where you don't want a darker colour showing through. So first of all, I'm actually going to paint in a base coat for her skin tones, and to do that I'm going to use 3 colours. I'm going to use the Pyrrole Red and the Yellow Ochre and some white. So first of all I'm just going to get some Yellow Ochre and mix in a little bit of red. As you can see, you don't need much red to make it go really dark, and you need a lot of white. So at the moment that's even too pink, so you have to add some more. And I'm going to wash my brush out because I'm going to add even more white to that. So whatever skin tone that you want to do, you just mix up your colours accordingly. And I can use these darker ones here for the shadows, and I'll also add a little blue in to grey it a bit for the shadow areas, but that's what basically the colours I'm going to be using for the skin tones. So I'm going to go for a medium coloured skin tone to start with, and I'm just blocking in really. Just getting the general shape in. I used a different pen for this one, and it's obviously the wrong pen to use because that colour hasn't set and it's bleeding into my paint. So this base coat will help with that as well, because it'll cover up the pen, and so when I go over it next time I shouldn't get that black bleeding through. Now I'm just going to go over with black paint around all the edges and around the outside of where I want my moon dress to go. So I've also painted around the sides of this canvas in black, and I'm going to just let this dry, and then I'm going to go over in white chalk and put back in the bits of the dress that I've painted over, just to give me a guideline so I know where it's supposed to be. Now, even though I want this dress to be white when it's finished, you can't make it look completely white and still get the folds and things in it. And because it's the moon, I'm going to start with some blue, I think. So I've mixed a very light blue using white and the ultramarine. And although I want the dress to look like part of the moon, I also want to make the eye think that it's still the moon. So I'm going to paint in this moon shape. And you never know when you're doing these things whether they're going to work in the end or not, so we'll see by the end if it's actually turning out the way that I'm thinking, or whether I have to change a few things along the way. And I'm going to do some darker blue in these bottom layers so that the highlights of the lights will show up a lot better. I don't know whether you'll be able to see it on the screen, but I can still see my pen lines, so I'll still be able to see where I'd put those for later. Now where I've had the black paint, I'm getting a grey blue, so that gives another dimension of shadow in there. I'm just going through and making sure that I've covered all the canvas, because I don't want any bits that aren't actually painted. Okay, so that's dry now. I'm just going to go through again with some more lights and darks and just continue working on the dress and where I want the folds and things to go. So I'm thinking about where I want the lightest parts. And I'm going to go ahead and do some more of the dark, which is just more of the ultramarine blue. So at this stage the ultramarine blue's only got a little bit of the white in it. I've just got some straight ultramarine blue on there, and I'm just going out a bit on the edges onto the black paint. And I think I might put a bit more highlight in where the edge is going to be for the edge of the moon. The paint's still wet, so I've just got some white that'll mix in with the blue that's already on there. And because it's a dress, not the actual moon, I just wanted to give it a suggestion of the moon. I'm not too worried about the edges being perfectly round for here. It just gives it a bit more of an organic feel. So I'm going to splash her on some stars now. This will be my first lot of stars, but I don't want the stars to go on top of her body there, because I'm going to have her blowing some stars up and out. So I want to keep this bit in here quite dark. So I'm just going to use a bit of paper towel, and I've got a piece of blue tack on the back. If you do this flat, you won't need to worry about the blue tack, but because I've got it upright, I'm just going to put that blue tack on there to hold it on. And then I'm just going to use my little fan brush, and I'm going to use some white paint watered down and sprinkle on some stars. So I've got some paint on my brush, and I'm just going to use my finger and splatter. I'm not being too worried about where they go at this stage, and I'm going to splatter some on the sides of the canvas as well. And I also think I might do some blue stars on there. So I'm just going to use the same ultramarine blue that I used on the dress, and I'm going to splatter some blue stars on as well. So I'm just going to water down that blue paint a bit and then splatter some of those on. And I might go even darker, put some more ultramarine blue in. And make some darker stars as well. Now if you get some stars like these ones that have gone a bit big, doesn't matter, you can just smooth them out a bit, because I'm going to have some white netting around there anyway. Now before I do anything else, I have to actually let all those stars dry, or when I go to do my next bit, they'll all smudge and I'll just get a smudgy mess. Okay, next I'm going to get some of my white paint and some of my glazing medium. So for glazing medium, I just use clear painting medium. I'm going to put that on my plate. Just going to put a blob of it, if you can see that. And I'm going to just mix that in with some of my white. Now a lot of my chalk lines have disappeared, but I can see enough of them to get an idea of where I wanted to go. So I'm doing the netting part of the dress at the moment. So you get a very thin layer, and you can see everything that's happening underneath it, which makes it look see-through. Gives that illusion of the netting. I'm just using my finger to smooth some of it out here and there. Now I also want to do these little bits that I had here. Now I can just see my outlines still. And I did it dark underneath so that hopefully it will show as a see-through piece. When I do that over the top. The darks will come through. I'm going to get some more of my white, and I'm going to emphasize this moon part again. I've switched to a round brush for that. I quite like the way this little bit looks like it's flicking up. So I'm going to try and keep that look going. And I'm going to emphasize that little point there for the moony kind of shape. I'm going to add some of my pale blue onto her bodice. And a lot of this top bit's going to be covered up with her hair later anyway, but I just like to get it in there so if anything's showing later it won't look funny. So now I'm going to get a more pink version of this skin tone. I'm going to use a small round brush. It's a 0. It's a little wee tiny one. And I'm thinking about where I want my shadows to go on my girl. It's a bit too red. I got a bit too much red on my brush there. So I'm thinking about where the shadows and where the lights are going to hit her body. And as I'm painting her neck here, I can see that I've made her neck too long. But that's just my lack of drawing skills of people coming through there. As I said, a lot of that's going to be covered up with hair, so you're not going to see it anyway. She's got a ballerina neck. And I'm also going to add a little bit of blue into this mixture. We're going to get a really kind of dirty looking colour, but it's a good base for the shadow. I'll show you what that colour looks like. It's that colour here. So it's sort of a browny yellow. And I'm just putting in where the darkest shadows would be. We'll be going over that with some more lights. So now I've added lots of white into that skin tone colour, and I'm thinking about where the light's going to be hitting on the top of her shoulder, and she's going to have stars coming off that hand, so the light's going to be hitting part of that and hitting her cheekbones. And this is all light here, so there'll be a little bit of light hitting her back there. And because I went a bit big with the light there, I'll just add a bit more of that pinky colour in. And I'm just going to leave that for now. I can always touch that up a bit more later. Now I'm going to do some of her hair. I'm going to start off with just a plain yellow ochre with nothing else in it, just to get a base down. I'm going to go in with some raw umber, which is this dark brown colour here. And I'm just going to do the darks on her here. And a lot of these will get covered up later, but I find it's easier to put in those darks and then go over with the highlights. And I wanted to have quite blondie white here this time, because she's a moon girl. So I'm going in with some white now. So I'm putting in some white highlights. I'm going to use my iridescent medium on this one. And I'm going to mix that with some of my clear painting medium just to make it spread more easily and be a bit more see-through. I'm just going to go over some of those light areas and give it a bit of a shimmer. And I could also go over my netting. And the less painting medium you have in there and the more iridescent medium, the more white it's going to look. I've just ended up going over the whole thing because I wanted to give it a more of a shimmery white feel to it. So I've let this all dry now, and I've come back and I put a little bit of chalk in here so I could see what it would look like. And I'd like to do few more lights in here to give it that moon shape a bit more. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm just using white, but I'm not going to do the whole moon shape. I'm just going to try and shape the dress a little bit with some extra lights to give that feel to it. And I'm looking at her hair, and I think I'd also like to do more white on her hair, and I might even add a bit more silver as well. So I'm going to add in the white first. This has actually got a little bit of the blue in it, more by accident than design, so it's not completely white. And while the white part's drying, I'm going to put in some more darks in her dress, because I think it needs to emphasize those white bits a bit more and to blend in with the space a bit more. So for the dark, I'm using some purple and the Prussian blue, and I've just mixed a little bit of the yellow ochre into it to grey it down, and I've put some glazing medium in it so it's not a solid colour. So that way I can still see what's going on underneath coming through. And I'm going to emphasise those little white bits there. And I don't want any hard edges around these bits, so I'm just smoothing it out with my finger. But I do want these little white bits to show. And maybe just emphasising that moon shape a little bit. And if you want to smooth it out a bit more and you've got enough colour on, you can just use the clear painting medium on its own to smooth out that colour. I'm going to get some silver metallic paint. I'm just using a Reeves silver here. And I'm just going to do a few little strands in the silver. I'm getting a nice mix of different colours going on in her hair. You get those little flashes of yellow and gold and silver. Now I've also got some blue interference paint, so I might just add some of that in as well. So when it catches the light, it'll be just a little shimmer of blue. And because it's going over a light colour, you don't see it that much until the light catches it. I think I'll use some of that interference paint, the blue interference paint on the moon as well. And just mix some of that in with the clear painting medium. And I'm going to get some of my titanium white. And I'm going to put some of that on the moon to really emphasise the white parts of the moon parts of her dress. A lot of it's very subtle, but it all adds layers and depth to the piece. And because it's acrylic paint, it's very easy to paint over. If you do something and you think, oh, I don't like that, I can just very easily paint over it. So don't be afraid to just have a go and experiment a bit and try different things and see if it's going to work for what you're making. So that's part of the joy of painting for me, is trying different things, seeing what will work and experimenting and just having some fun with it. Got some of that interference paint on my brush mixed with the clear painting medium, so I'm just doing a few little bits there. I think I might like to add a few more little darks back into her hair. And this time I'm going to use this dark purple mixture that I used earlier. I don't need a whole lot, I just need a little bit. And I think I'll get some of my titanium white and my little number 0 round brush and put a few really bright highlights in her hair as well. Okay, so I'm liking where this is going so far. I think I might just do a little bit of white details in the little netting bits that are coming down here. So I'm just going to use my little wee brush there and some titanium white. So I'm using my number 0 round brush. And I just want to do some little lacy pattern, but nothing obvious, just something very subtle. And it's going to be fairly random. I'm using some thicker paint up here where I've got the white bits. So I don't want a solid line, I just want to give a sort of a suggestion of what's going on. Now I could have gone a lot whiter with my dress if I had wanted to. I could glaze over more white to make it look more white, but I'm actually quite liking the blue in there, so I'm not going to make that whiter. I don't like the shape here, so I need to refine that shape a bit more. So I'm going to get some more of my nearly white, pale blue colour and just fix up that shape. Now I've ended up emphasising this shape a lot more to give it a more of a moon feel to it, and as I said at the beginning, it would quite possibly change from my original concept of what I was doing, just depending on how it looked and what I liked and what I didn't like. I've put in her little stars that she's going to be coming off her hand. And I'm also going to add some more stars into her dress. Now normally I would do this flat, so I would just lay my bits on where I wanted them, because I'm going to use these, I'm going to use some paper towel. As you can see, I've used that paper towel before, but it's all dry. And I've just ripped some strips off that go in a curvy kind of nature to follow the edge of the dress. And I'm going to just put it on where I think I want to have the darks without any stars on them, or any more stars than I've already got. So if you're doing this flat, you can just lie this flat straight on there, and you don't have to stick it down with blue tack, which makes it a lot easier. And then I'm going to use my fan brush to do my white stars. And the reason why I switch brushes is because I find the fan brush makes bigger stars, and the toothbrush generally does smaller stars. It does depend on how watery your paint is, but that's generally what I'm finding. And I'm also going to do a few white stars with my toothbrush as well. You can concentrate your stars on where you want them to go. So I've done quite a few in this area and around where the moon is. And then we'll take off the paper and see what it looks like. And it just makes lovely patterns. It emphasises the patterns that you've got going in there a bit more. So as you can see, I've got really straight lines going on here. So I don't want those lines to be quite that straight. So I can come back with my brush and just do a little bit of splattering just to diffuse that line out a little bit. Now, because I've got some of that gold in her hair, I'm going to include some of that gold in some of the rest of the picture. So I'm going to get some of my shimmering gold interference paint, and I'm just going to dot a few goldy stars on here. Just to give it a little bit of a gold shimmer, and it just helps blend that gold in her hair with the rest of the picture, so it's not like some random bit of colour on there. Look, so I'm going to sprinkle a bit of that in here as well. I'm just using my finger to break up the dots a bit, because the dots that you use your brush with, I find, look quite different and harsh compared to the dots that you sprinkle on, that you splatter on. Now this bit here has gone really light. I should have probably made it a bit darker here, covered it up when I did the splattering, so that this bit here isn't very emphasized. But I can just come along with my paintbrush now, with my glazing medium and a bit more of my blue, and I can just re-emphasize that edge. And I'll blend it out into there. I may even want a bit of that purple colour in there. I'm going to use some of my silver, and like I did with the white, I'm going to just put a little bit of silver just to emphasize those little bits and give it a little sparkle and a little point of difference to the rest of the dress. Now I can't actually see that very well, so you probably can't see it at all. So I'm going to switch to something different. And I'm going to use my violet interference paint instead. So they're all just very subtle kind of colours, but it all helps to build up that beautiful ethereal look in the end. Although we've gone over a lot of that iridescent paint, it is still coming through, so it's not shiny all over, it's just showing in different spots, which is looking really pretty. And now I've got a bit of my gold paint, not the interference paint this time, just normal gold, and I'm just going to go around a few of these little stars to emphasize them a bit and make them look like they're glowing. And I might do a few down here as well. Doing mostly the bigger ones. And so where I've put the gold interference paint in those areas, I'm putting some of the normal gold paint as well, just around some of the bigger stars. I think we're nearly done. There's a tiny bit of the violet interference paint into the stars and on her dress here, just using the same method as I was doing before of tapping it on with the brush and then tapping it with my finger to spread it out a bit. And there's only one last thing that I need to do here, and that's to sign my name. So although this tutorial wasn't really a step-by-step because there was a bit of experimenting and figuring out how I wanted to do it, you could see the process and how to use the glazing medium to get all these beautiful layers, and how the interference paint and the iridescent medium helps to make that lovely shimmer. So I'll see if I can show you how the iridescent medium and the interference paint makes it glow. You can see the colours show more as it moves in the light. And we'll show you a close-up of the girl with all the subtle colours in her hair and the stars up the top there. So lots of layers and lots of stars and lots of different things going on, and it all builds up to make something really beautiful. So when you're painting, just remember that you don't have to have just one layer. I think the secret to a really colourful and dynamic acrylic painting is actually doing lots of layers. So if you'd like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button, and I'll see you next time. Happy painting, everyone. Bye.